Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf, which is SUKKAH Daf Mem. We are actually 11 lines from the top of the Amud. And now we're in the midst of a sugya of Shemitah. In yesterday's Daf we discussed a case where a person wishes to purchase a lulav and esrog on the Shemitah year. You must keep in mind that just as the Shemitah fruit has Kedushas Shvius, which in effect means it needs to be consumed properly, the way fruit is meant to be consumed, la'achia, achila, shtia, etc., rather than misused and perhaps used as a commodity, something to do business with. Not only that, it has to be consumed within its proper time frame, within the Zman Habir, on Shemitah itself, as long as the produce is still available for the animals out in the field. So just as these special halachas apply to the fruit itself, it also applies to the value, meaning money paid in exchange for Shemitah fruit also has that type of Kedusha and must be consumed properly within the Shemitah year. And therefore, says the Gemara, one must be careful. He must take care and give that money only to somebody who is trusted to use that money properly, as opposed to an Amoritz who is unlearned and perhaps will not use that money the way Shemitah money is meant to be used. Therefore, when it comes to an esrog, which was actually picked on the Shemitah year, since when it comes to an esrog, it identifies with the year that it was picked on, that esrog is Kaddish B'Kedusha Shvius, and may not be purchased from an Amoritz, unless he includes the esrog price in the price of the lulav, in which case you're not giving him Shvius money. But otherwise, be careful not to hand over esrog money to an Amoritz. However, this concern only applies to the esrog picked on the 7th year, but not to the lulav. Why? Because as we learned yesterday, when it comes to a tree, it doesn't identify with the year that the product was picked on. Rather, it identifies with the year on which it began to grow, which is last year, the 6th year. So it's not Kaddish B'Kedusha Shvius, and that lulav, although picked on the Shemitah year, can be purchased outright from an Amoritz. Says the Gemara in the 11th line from the top. Okay, now comes a kasha. Tama. So the reason that we're not concerned about the lulav is because it's what type of lulav? The lulav bar shishis. It was mostly grown on the 6th year. Hanichnas l'shviusa, which merely entered the 7th. It was picked on the 7th, but it doesn't identify with the 7th year. So it's not Kaddish B'Kedusha Shvius. There's no concern with purchasing that lulav from the Amoritz. Apparently, says the Gemara, Ha the Shvius, had it have been picked on the 7th year, had it have grown on the 7th year, Kaddish, it would have had Kedusha. A lulav has Kedusha Shvius. Amai, why? Eitzim ba'amu. It's merely wood. Ve'eitzim ein ban mishum Kedusha Shvius. There's no Kedusha Shvius applied to wood. The Sanya, as we learned in the following price, Ali kanim, reed leaves, vali gifanim, vine leaves, which have a dual function. They can be used as firewood, or can be used for animal feed. So it depends on his intention. Why did he pick them? Why did he gather them? Shegavavan, so these leaves which were gathered, lechuba, for storage purposes, to store them away, alpnei asada, so they were gathered from around the field, for storage purposes. What din does it have? How do we classify these leaves? It depends on the purpose. It depends on his intention. Loktan la'achila, if he gathered them for animal feed, yesh ben mishum kedusha shvius. They have kedusha shvius and must be treated properly. They can't be misused. They can't be destroyed. The pasuk says, "V'hoisa shabbos ha'oretz lachem la'achla." Shvius produce must be eaten and consumed properly. So when it comes to these leaves, if they're classified as food items, loktan la'achila, they acquire kedusha shvius, as opposed to loktan la'etzim. If he gathers them to be used for firewood, for heating, for cooking, ein b'hem mishum kedusha shvius. They don't have kedusha shvius, because wood It's not something which you consume. It's not liachla. It's not a fruit. It doesn't have kedusha shvius. Pretty clear that eitzim doesn't have kedusha. So why would a lulav be an issue? Even if that lulav grew on the 7th year, it would not have kedusha. It's just a branch. It's inedible. Answers the Gemara, no. A lulav would have kedusha shvius if it would have grown on the 7th year. Shani Hasam, no, that's different. That brisa is different. The Amakra, the pasuk says like this: V'hoisa Shabbos ha'aretz lochem, which sounds like you take the produce and use it for whatever you want, for all your hanos, all your benefits. Then the pasuk says la'achla, only for consumption, for eating. How do we work this out? Can it be used for anything, or is it limited to achila? Answers the Gemara, both are right. We compare one to the other. Lochem, the hanois, which you wish to have from shvi's products, doesn't have to be specifically achila, but it has to be similar to achila, dumi la'achila. That's why the pasuk says lochem la'achla. Lochem denotes all other types of uses, but it has to compare to la'achla. Dumya de la'achla. What does that mean? What's unique about achila? Says the Gemara, the key is like this: a use where the benefit, the hana, and the biur, the destruction of that item is shava, is taking place simultaneously at the very same moment that the item is being destroyed, being consumed. You are consuming it. Now that's called a direct hana. That's called la'achla. For instance, eating, drinking, smearing, lighting a lamp. As opposed to firewood, yotzu eitzim, shana asan acha biuran. Over there, the hana takes place when? Much later. See, typically, wood being used for firewood, whether for heating or cooking, the hana will come after it's already turned into coals. That's when you're going to use those coals. You're going to use that hana after destruction. A post-destruction hana doesn't conform to achila. Rabbi Yehuda explains, the pasuk says, lachem la'achla, to consume, to eat, v'loy lahefsid. Right? The Gemara has that drasha, v'loy lahefsid. You can't just destroy shvi's fruit. Hashem gives it to you to enjoy, to partake in a direct way. Therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, if you take this shvi's product, this eights of shvi's, you destroy it, turn it into a coal, and then you have anah. You've done hefsid. You've destroyed one thing to produce something else. That's an indirect use. That's not called achla. Oh, so that explains why when it comes to these ali konim v'ali gefanim, it matters what you have in mind. If your intention was la'achila, to feed it to the animal, here you go. That's a direct hana. That's hana and beer taking place at the same time. You're consuming it and it's getting consumed simultaneously. It's a direct hana. That's achila. If his kavanah was la'etzim, for firewood, then you're not being mekayim la'achla. It's not intended for direct achila, and therefore it doesn't have kedusha shvius. Let's go over to Rashi, pretty much parallel to our location in the Gemara. So off to the right, beginning with the word shagavavan. So you pick these leaves, shagavavan shekinsan la'itzaran. So you gather it to store it. L'chuba l'shem machbet, to hide it, to store it. So it depends. Loktan la'achila l'machal behema, it has kedusha shvius. But otherwise, if it's la'etzim, it doesn't have kedusha shvius. The Gemara explained, what is the reason for that? And why would it be different than a lulav, where we seem to think that it has kedusha shvius if it would have grown on Shemitah? Continues Rashi, Shani Hasam. It's very different. You know why firewood doesn't have kedusha shvius? The Amakra v'oisa Shabbos v'gomer, right? And lachem la'achla u'mashma. And we learn from here lachem l'chol tzarchechem. On the one hand, we say for all your needs, all your uses, anything you need it for. Uksiv la'achla. Then the pasuk says specifically for eating purposes. How do we reconcile? Answer is lememra. It's coming to teach us. This is the formula meant to be followed. Dei muta lahanes per shvius el hana Hadoim l'achila. You can have hana from Shvi's products as long as that hana conforms to achila. It's similar to eating or to drinking. What does that mean? Shana asay. The hana derived ubi uroi, and the moment of destruction, when the item gets consumed, is shava, simultaneous, taking place at the same time. So it's a direct hana from that item. Happening at the very same time. Kigoin sicha, smearing, ushtia, vadlagas haner. So that's the allowance. You can use Shvi's products provided you're using it directly, not just using it as a means to produce a hana, which comes post-destruction. That's one side of the coin. Continues Rashi. This concept has another application as well. We also learn from here that only an item, only an object which has the ability to provide that type of use has Kedusha Shvi'is. You see, if the Torah gives you this type of allowance, then what is the Torah telling you? Only an item, only a pri which can provide this type of hana is Kaddish B'Kedusha Shvi'is. We have this next application for the same drasha. When is Shabbos Oretz Noyeg? When does it apply? When is Kedusha Shvi'is activated? With respect to something which is granted to you la'achila, which has the capacity to provide that type of hana, that simultaneous eating and consumption at the same time type of hana. Shana asa doim la'achila. An item which can provide a hana which is similar to achila, as opposed to firewood, which doesn't conform. It doesn't provide that type of benefit. It's used differently than the achla. Continues Rashi. Ya'atzu ati asaka shana asan achabiru. The hana is post-destruction. Once it turns into coals, it's too late. Firewood is no longer here, and now you're going to enjoy it. That's destruction. You destroy the firewood to enjoy the coals. And therefore, you can't do that. And basically, it means it doesn't have Kedusha Shvi'is because it can't supply the proper hana. So that's with respect to firewood. Ava lulav, getting back to our sugya, by lulav it's different. Ikar hana asur l'chabetz habayis. Its primary function, at least in those days, was to use the lulav as a broom, sweep the home. Vushas biur v'kol kulay. The hana and destruction are taking place at the same time. When you sweep it, it gets worn out. It's simultaneous. V'domei l'hanas achila, and it very much compares to the hana of eating. So that's why a lulav, if it grows on Shemitah, it is Kaddish B'Kedusha Shvi'is. Getting back to the Alik Fanim that we discussed, Alik Kanim, Alik Fanim, Kaim Lachi Lachi, they have a dual function. It can go either way. It can be used La'achila, in which case it has Kedusha Shvi'is. It can supply that type of hana, which is within the context of La'achla. And it can be used as firewood, in which case it doesn't have the capacity to provide a Shvi'is type of hana, in which case it doesn't have Kedusha Shvi'is. So what do? Hilkach basa machshava asli. So his intention determines. His kavanah is kivea, the status of that substance. So bottom line is like this. Rashi explains it. Torah says, Torah is telling you the allowance is only lachem la'achla. If you're going to have a na which is similar to achila, if you're going to enjoy the Shvi'is product in a direct way, consuming it while it gets consumed, hana and the beer together, such as achila, such as shtia, such as sicha, alokasaner, as opposed to enjoying it post-destruction. Now, at the same time, says Rashi, we learn another thing. What type of item has Kedusha Shvi'is? Only that type of chayfetz that can provide, that has the capacity to offer a hana which conforms to the achla. Right? V'hoisa Shabbos Haaretz Lachem La'acha tells you that the Kedushas Haaretz only extends to something which can be consumed in a direct way. To enjoy the Shvius product in a direct way. As opposed to firewood, which can't provide that. The Hana is only after it's destroyed. It's post-destruction Hana, and therefore that item can't provide Hana Shvius, Achila Shvius. And that item is not included in Kedusha Shvius. So in essence, Kedusha Shvius really means enjoy the land in a Shvius manner. So something which can provide that is included in Kedusha Shvius, but otherwise is not. Continues the Gemara. Va'ika eitzim de mishchan. So firewood is not included. What about eitzim de mishchan, this oily type of wood, which was used for lighting, for hadlaka, used as a torch? So in that case, dana asan ubiur and shava, the ana and the beer and the destruction are taking place at the same time. Unlike firewood used for fuel, where the ikar ana is post-destruction, once it turns into coals, here you're actually enjoying the wood itself. It's illuminating while it's getting consumed. So perhaps should we say that has Kedusha Shvius? Should we make an exception? Amarava no. Stam eitzim la. Stam eitzim lahasaka in eindin. Typically firewood is meant for wood is meant for firewood. Says the Ritva, the Torah was not machalik. The majority of wood is meant for heating, for cooking, and we don't make exceptions. All types of wood have the same halacha. There's no Kedusha Shvius. Says the Gemara, this concept that the hana and the beer has to take place at the same time is actually machlekes tanoim. Ve'etim la'asaka tanoi, firewood meant for fuel or for cooking, and therefore does not have Kedusha Shvius, is a machlekes tanoim. One Tana maintains, simultaneous hana with destruction is a necessary component. The other Madama says no. As long as you have some sort of hana. Look, the thing was meant to provide this hana. So even if it happens post-destruction, that's okay. That's still called lochem la'achla. So it's actually machlekes tanoim. The Sanya. A meisrin peres shvius. You cannot use shvius peres for uses other than direct usages, like a chilu v'shti, etc. Loy mishra. Can use wine, for instance, for soaking of flax. Loy kvusa. Nor can use shvius products as detergent to wash your laundry. Why? Because destruction and spoilage takes place immediately upon contact, but the hana only takes place later. A couple of days later, when your flax fibers began separating, when your clothing cleaned up, got washed. So the hana is only later. It's only post-destruction. That's not allowed. Rabbi Yehuda, no, there's no concern. Moisrin, you can use peres shvius for these purposes as well. My time at Tanakama. What's the Tanakama's reason? The makra la'achla. Peres shvius are meant la'achila. V'lo mishra, as opposed to using it for soaking of flax. V'lo kvusa, as opposed to using it for laundry. My time at Rabbi Yehuda. What's Rabbi Yehuda's reason? Who allows these things? Makra lachem. Lachem l'chal tzorchechem. Lachem is all-encompassing. All your needs, all your uses. Even to soak your flax or to wash your laundry. Tanakama ksiv lachem. What did Tanakama do with the word lachem? Which is all-inclusive. Hahu lachem dum yad la'achla. I understand that it says lachem, but it's right next to the word la'achla. It has to be similar to achila, which is mishana asay ubi ure shava. What type of use is mutar? Torah allows you to have hana if it's taking place at the same moment as biur. So your consumption with the item being consumed are one and the same. That's achila. Yatsu mishra or kvus, as opposed to soaking and washing with it. Shana asan acha biuran. In which case the biur is immediate and the hana is only days later. That's called destruction. You're destroying this to get that. That's not achila. Rav Moshe Feinstein writes, you see, as opposed to using a shvius plant to dye, to color fiber, where the hana is immediate because your beged is rising in value. You have an immediate hana. That's called hana asay ubi'urei shav, destruction and benefit at the same time. But mishra and kvusa, a washed beged isn't necessarily worth more. So there's no immediate effect here. The hana is only later, when you actually have a beged to wear, when you had it flax, which is processed. So in any case, the Nakama excludes these items. Mishra kvusa cannot be a function that will be done with perish shvius. Rabbi Yehuda Kessler la'achla, or Rabbi Yehuda do la'achla, which indicates limitation and restriction. He applies that pasuk for the following: la'achla, perish shvius are meant la'achila v'lo melugma, as opposed to using them to form a salve, an ointment, to cover a wound. That's not something uniform. That's not something that everybody benefits from. And perish shvius can only be used for the type of hana which can benefit all. Kedisanya, as we learned in the price. The word la'achla tells you v'lo lugma, as opposed to being used for an ointment. La'achla v'lo lugma. You're suggesting that la'achla is coming to exclude lugma. Or maybe perhaps Ella v'lo kvusa. The la'achla is coming to exclude laundering, washing clothing, because the hana follows destruction. But when the pasuk says lochem, that's all inclusive. Apparently we're including laundering. If so, why is the pasuk limited by saying the word la'achla? Apparently la'achla is coming to exclude melugma. Says, how do you know which one to include and which one to exclude? Ma rohis. What leads you to prefer l'rabbi sakvusa to include washing clothing? L'hoitzis melugma to exclude melugma. Ma'arbani sakvusa. I'm going to include kvusa because that's something uniform, something universal. Sheshava v'chal adam. Everybody washes their clothing, and the shvius product is intended for that too. That's included in la'achla, lochem la'achla. Umoitzi as a melugma, as opposed to melugma, she'ein shava l'chal adam. It's not something which everybody benefits from. It's only for the chayla. That's not what the Torah had in mind. So I have a choice, what to include and what to exclude. Says Rabbi Yehuda, I'll include anything which is shava l'chal adam. Mishra, kvusa, everybody can benefit from that. As opposed to melugma, which is a specialty. It's only for an ill person, a person with a wound. And apparently the Torah is excluding that. So here we have the machlokes. Within Tanakama says, Hanoi also yobi'urei shava is a vital component. Torah allows you to use perish shvius in a manner where you're having the hana directly from the item, as opposed to first destroying the item and then having hana. That excludes fayud, that excludes mishra, kavusa. Rabbi Yehuda says that's not necessary. As long as you have a hana which is shavala koil adam, a universal hana, something which everybody needs. Even if it happens to come after destruction, that's okay, because the item is meant for that. You're not destroying the item to get something from it. It's part of the process. You soak it, yeah, it gets spoiled, but it's part of the hana'ah process which comes afterwards. That's also included in lechem la'achla. Says the man Tana lahada Tana Rabban. Who's the Tana, the author of the following brisa, which says la'achla v'lo melugma? The word la'achla is excluding a salve because it's not something that equally benefits everybody. La'achla v'lo ziluf. You have to eat it, but you can't use it for ziluf, sprinkling of wine throughout the home to produce a pleasant odor. That's also a specialty. It's not something which is equally enjoyed by all. As opposed to using shvius products. You take some type of shvius formula and you use it to induce vomiting. That's also a specialty item. His items aren't needed or appreciated by all people equally, and therefore you cannot apply shvius products for these things. Who is the man the Amar? of this price. It says more Kiman, Rabbi Yosi. Apparently it's Rabbi Yosi. Why? The Rabban, if it would have been the Rabbanon, we're missing on the list. We're missing Mishra and Kvusa. Ha'ikanami Mishra Kvusa, which they disallow. In fact, the Brisa limits the exceptions to only things which are not Shaval Kol Adam, such as Malugma, Ziluf, and Akbek Tfizin, and leaves out Mishra Kvusa. Apparently, this Tana allows Shvi's products to be used for Mishra and Kvusa, even though the Hana comes after the beer. That must be Shittas Rabbi Yosi. Okay, so let's just summarize the sugi up until this point. We have the pasuk which says, "Va'isa Shabbos ha'oros lachem la'achla." The way Rashi explained it, lachem is mashma, all types of hana. It's not necessarily eating types of hana. The pasuk la'achla tells you it has to be similar to achila. So how do we work this out? We have two approaches. We have the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yosi. Tanna Kama says the formula is hana asay u'be'urei shava. Torah allows you to have hana when the hana actually consumes the item, as opposed to consuming the item first and then having hana. That's called destruction. As opposed to Rabbi Yosi says, that isn't a necessary component. As long as you have hana, whichever way, even if it's post-destruction, that's included in la'achla. What does he exclude? A hana which isn't uniformly appreciated. It needs to be a hana hashava b'koil. Okay, so let's go down the list. When it comes to a lulav, all agree it has kedusha shvius because it can provide that type of hana. As Rashi explained, when it's used as a broom, the hana and destruction and wearing out happens at the same time, and it's certainly something which is shava b'koil, and therefore the lulav which can provide a shvius type of hana has kedusha shvius. When it comes to firewood, eitzim, or even eitz shemen, which is regarded like all other firewoods, now we have a machlekes. Tanna Kama says that cannot provide hana b'shas beer. You only enjoy it once it turns into a coal. So an item which cannot provide a shvius type of hana is not kaddish b'kedusha shvius. Rabbi Yosi disagrees. Even though the hana follows destruction, that's still included in achila on shvius, and therefore even firewood has kedusha shvius. It's a hana which is shava b'koil. When it comes to these ali kanim ali gefanim, which can be used either way, either la'achila or la'hasaka. So Tanna Kama maintains if he picked it la'achila, then it's providing the hana which is b'shas beer. Kedusha shvius. He's going to pick it la'hasaka to be used as firewood. Then it doesn't have kedusha shvius because it's not going to supply a shvius type of hana. Rabbi Yosi disagrees once again. He says even la'hasaka, where you're going to have the hana after destruction, that's okay. That's a shvius type of hana, and that item has kedusha shvius. Same machlokes is by mishra kvusa. Can we use shvius products for mishra, to soak your flax in it, to wash your laundry? Tanna Kama says no. That type of hana is post-destruction. Rabbi Yosi says that's okay. That's still allowed as long as it's hana which is shava b'koil. Then we have malugma, ziluf, and akbek tfizin. All agree you cannot use shvius products for those reasons, for those purposes. Rabbi Yosi says that's not hana shava b'koil. It's not equally needed or appreciated by all people. And it seems from the Gemara that Tanna Kama as well, Chacham as well agree that shvius may not be used for these items because they agree that something which is not shava b'koil is not something which you can use perish shvius for. Continues the Gemara. So we learned in the Mishnah that not only is the esrog kodesh b'kedusha shvius, but even monies given in exchange for that esrog has kedusha shvius, and that's the whole concern with giving that money to Am Haaretz. And once again, what does kedusha shvius mean? It has to be consumed properly, directly, in its proper time, on Shemitah, lochem la'achla, as opposed to being used as a commodity, as an investment. So not only is the fruit kaddish, but the money as well. Now, how does the money get kaddish? We have machlokes. Amar Blaz. Ein shvius mischalelas ela derech mekach. When we say that the money of shvius has kedusha shvius, that only happens derech mekach, by way of transaction. You paid money for the esrog that you purchased. That money has kedusha shvius. Rabbi Yehuda Amar, not necessarily derech mekach. Bein derech mekach, whether it happened via transaction. Bein derech chilul, even derech chilul, meaning you have an esrog fruit. You take that fruit and you say, I want the kedusha of this esrog to extend itself over to that fruit, to that money. Derech chilul, like you do by hegdish. Even in that case, says Rabbi Yehuda, the money will have kedusha shvius. Let's go over to Rashi, off to the left. It says Rashi, Ein shvius mischalelas litfois dameh b'kedushasa. The only way to have shvius money become kaddish is el derech mekach. Shemecher ze lechaveri. By selling an item, you sell it and you receive money in exchange. That money now has kedusha shvius. Now we must keep in mind one very important thing, which we're going to learn in the hemshech of the sugya. When we speak about shvius money being kaddish, it's not an exchange of the original fruit. That always remains kaddish. A shvius fruit is a shvius fruit. Can't lose its kedusha. It's inherently kaddish. It grew on the 7th year. The Gemara means that the money as well will have kedusha shvius. Okay, so that has to be clear. So Rabbi Yehuda says that only happens derech mekach. Continues Rashi, el derech mekach shemoicher ze lechaveri, by way of purchasing, selling and buying. Avaloi de chilul. You can't do it by way of chilul. What does that mean? Loimar hari peres halolu michulol na'mois el elu. By saying, well, the kedusha on these peres will be transferred to that money, or extended over to that money. That doesn't work. Kederach shapoid nekdeshes, like you do by hegdish. By hegdish it works, but not by shvius. The Gemara is going to elaborate on this further, but we have this machlekes at this point. How are you going to incorporate the money into the kedusha shvius? Rabbi Yehuda says only derech mekach, by exchanging, by purchasing. So you give the esrog, you get money. That money is sort of substituting for the esrog. That's your way of consuming the esrog. You give away the esrog. Now you have money instead, and that's the way you're going to be oichel that esrog, so to speak. So the money received in exchange for that esrog, which is basically taking the place of the esrog, will have kedusha shvius. It must be treated properly. Rabbi Yehuda adds, not only that way, but even through the chilul mode. You take the hegdish, the shvius fruit, and you say, I want this kedusha to be extended over to that money. That works as well. Continues the Gemara. My time with Rabbi Yehuda. What's Rabbi Yehuda's reason that this only works derech mekach hamemka? D'chsi b'shnas hayovel hazois. Pasuk speaking about yovel, which is pretty much synonymous with shmita. What does the pasuk say right afterwards? V'samachlei. Nearby it says v'chi simkru mimkar. What do we learn? It's called a drasha of smuch, the fact that the Torah puts two items within close proximity to each other. We learn that the concept of kedusha shvius being transferred to money is only derech mekach, v'lo derech chilul. Rabbi Yehuda, my time. What's Rabbi Yehuda's reason? That even derech chilul works. Chsiv ki yovel hi kodesh. Pasuk refers to yovel, which is synonymous with shmita, and the pasuk refers to it as kodesh. So we compare it to hegdish. Ma kodesh bein derech mekach, bein derech chilul. Just as the kedusha of a hegdish item, something which was committed to the base of Mikdash, that kedusha can get transferred over to money, whether if it's by way of transaction, by way of a straight out transfer, a chilul. By the way, when it comes to hegdish, the original hegdish loses its kedusha, so it's different than shvius, where the original fruit will always retain its kedusha. But that's not what we're discussing here. We're discussing how to incorporate the money into the kedusha. This is Rabbi Yehuda. The fact that the Torah sort of equates shmita to hegdish, we learn just as the kedusha of hegdish gets transferred to its money by way of mekach or memker, or even by chilul, a direct transfer, af shvius, likewise by shvius, bein derech mekach, bein derech chilul. Rabbi Yehuda haiki simkuru mimkar mayavli. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that the money can get included into the kedusha, even by way of chilul. What does he do with Rabbi Yehudah's pasuk? we find the Torah mentioning mechira in the context of shvius, which indicates that the kedusha can only be transferred to the money by way of mechira, by way of transaction. What do you do with that pasuk? Mayavadle. Says the Gemara, he has another application. He's going to teach us a very important lesson about the chashivas of Perush Shvius. And how important it is to handle them properly, treat them with the proper respect. He applies it to Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina's halach. This is Sanya. Omar Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina, Boyrei, come take a look. Kama kosha, afkosh shvius. How severe is even the avak, the dust, the lower tier limitations and halachas of shvius? What's he referring to? Schera. Treating shvius fruit as a commodity, doing business with it. Why is it called av kosher shvius? Rashi says it's not the ikar ha'isr. The ikar ha'isr is don't plant, don't trim. That's the ikar ha'isr. Doing schera, it's not the ikar ha'isr shvius. Taisus points out that it's only a mitzvah asay. Pasuk says, right, v'hoisa Shabbos ha'aretz lachem la'achla, meant to be used for eating. And we learn from there, la'achla v'lo l'schera, as opposed to doing business with it. So it's only a mitzvah asay. So it's sort of a secondary element within Shemitah. And look how severe it is. Look how severe of a consequence it can produce if somebody misuses and abuses the Perush Shvius. Adam noiseh v'noisen Perush Shvius. If one wheels and deals with Perush Shvius, he's looking to profit from Perush Shvius. He thinks he's going to get wealthy. Look what happens to him. L'seif meicheres metatlav. He ends up losing his possessions. He'll have to sell metatlav as kalev, all his assets, all his belongings. That's how desperate he'll be. How do we know this? Pasuk is describing the halachas of Shemitah. What does it say right afterwards? If you come to the point of desperation, you can actually sell your belongings. So the drasha of Smuchin is coming to tell us the importance of treating Perush Shvius properly. And that's what Rabbi Yechanan does with this pasuk. Now, conversely, what does Rabbi Lezer do with Rabbi Yechanan's pasuk? The pasuk which said Ki Yovel Kodesh, which seems to equate the kedusha of Shemitah and Yovel to Hegdish, which Rabbi Yechanan used to teach us that the same mode of chilul that applies by Hegdish applies to Shemitah. You don't need derech mekach, even derech chilul, direct transfer is enough. So Rabbi Lezer, who disagrees with Rabbi Yechanan, do with that pasuk. He applies it to the following halach, as we learned in the Brisa. Ki Yovel Kodesh. Yovel is like Kodesh. What does that teach you? It teaches you the concept. How do we even know that money received in exchange for a Shemitah fruit has Kedusha? We learn it from the fact that the Torah compares it to a Hegdish. Ma Kodesh Teifes is damav, just as the Kedusha of Hegdish extends over to its money. You can transfer the Hegdish over to its money. Av Shvius, Teifes is dameh, likewise by Shemitah. The Kedusha can extend over to money received in exchange for that Shemitah fruit, but as Rabbi Yechanan insists, it only happens if it's derech mekach, by way of transaction. So in conclusion, we have Rabbi Lezer, we have Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Lezer says that the monies of Shvius will only be incorporated to the Kedusha Shvius if it was done derech mekach, if it was received in exchange for a Shemitah fruit. He learns that from the pasuk B'shnas Hayovel Azois, which is followed by the pasuk V'chisimkru, which indicates that Kedusha Shvius is dependent upon mechira, upon transaction. Rabbi Yechanan learns from Ki Yovel Kodesh Tielachem that Yovel is synonymous with Hegdish. And just as by Hegdish, the Kedusha can get transferred by way of either option, derech mekach or chilul, likewise by Shemitah, it works the same way. Now, what will Rabbi Lezer do with that pasuk? Ki Yovel Kodesh Tielachem is coming to tell you that the Shemitah fruit is Teifes damav. The Kedusha extends over to the money. What does Rabbi Yechanan do with B'shnas Hayovel V'chisimkru? He's coming to warn you how important it is to treat Perush Shvius properly. Don't try to profit from Perush Shvius because it can lead to very severe consequences. A person can actually come to a desperate point where he has to sell his belongings. But otherwise, says Rabbi Yechanan, you can transfer that Kedusha using either method, either Mekach or Chilul, just like by Hegdish, which Rabbi Lezer maintains. Shvius is very different from Hegdish. You see, we have a pretty clear difference as far as the original fruit. You see, by Hegdish, as we mentioned earlier, by Hegdish, the Kedusha of the original item gets transferred to the money. And the original item is no longer Kaddish. It's a different type of thing. As opposed to Shvius, where the fruit is the seventh year fruit, it can't lose that identity. It never loses that Kedusha. So what then happens? Says Rabbi Lezer, Torah is telling you, look, if you exchange one thing for the next, you have too many apples. If you exchange an apple for a pear, so that pear takes the place of the apple. Or if you exchange it for money, that money is now in exchange for that apple. It's taking the place, it's substituting for that apple. And when you use that money, it's going to be sort of a way of consuming that original fruit. As far as you're concerned, you're consuming the apple by way of the new product that you're going to buy with that money that you receive in exchange for that apple. So that's the way it works. Only derech mekach. Because really, you're not transferring the Kedusha. Kedusha remains in the original fruit. It's just that you are eating the second item as a substitute for the first item. You're sort of fulfilling the achila of the first item, but we have the second item. That only works derech mekach. If you exchange one for the other, yeah. So this is instead of that. But it doesn't work derech chilul. You can't take the apple and say the Kedusha of this apple will transfer or extend over to the money. That doesn't work. Because the money isn't coming in exchange for that apple. You haven't given away the apple and taken something instead. So that leads Rabbi Lezer to the conclusion that only derech mekach is teifes damav. So what you receive in exchange for that first item, in your mind, is considered like consuming that first item. It's a fulfillment of the achila of that first item. That's what the Torah meant when it said that the substitute will have kedusha of that first item. Because instead, it's a substitute. So it only works in that manner. Says the Gemara, Tani Kabbalah Rabbi Lezer, Tani Kabbalah Rabbi Yechanan. We're actually going to have a right from a brisa to either shita. Let's start with Tani Kabbalah Rabbi Lezer. A right to Rabbi Lezer that it's only teifes damav derech mekach. Brisa says shvius teifes dameh. The kedusha of the shvius fruit extends over to its money. How do we know shenemar? Ki yavi kodesh tiyalachem. Right? Compare it to hegdish. Ma kodesh teifes es damav. Va'aser. Just as the kedusha of the hegdish gets transferred over to its money, and that money now has kedushas hegdish, it must be used appropriately. Av shvius teifes dameh va'asur. Same thing by shvius. The kedusha of that shvius fruit can extend over to its money. Now that money has these special halachas of shvita. It needs to be consumed properly, directly, at its appropriate time. Says the Brisa, well, if we're going to compare Shemitah to Hegdish, perhaps all the way, just as by Hegdish, when that kedusha gets transferred to money, what happens to the original item? It's Yotze L'chulin. It loses its Hegdish. Perhaps by Shemitah as well. Av Shvius Teifeses Dameh. The kedusha gets extended, transferred to the money. What happens to the original fruit? V'Yotze L'chulin. The original apple will lose its kedusha Shvius. Is that so? No. That can't be. Talmud Leimer, we learn from a pasuk, Tia. That very same pasuk has the word Tia. Ki yovel hi kodesh, Tia lochem. What does Tia teach you? Leave it intact. Ba'avyosate. That original fruit remains kodesh. It's so different than a hegdish item, which wasn't naturally kodesh. You've applied a kedusha to that item. You've taken a mundane item and made it kodesh. So that kedusha which sort of rides on that item can be transferred to a different item or to other money. The original item now is bereft of any kedusha It wasn't inherent. It wasn't a naturally occurring Kedusha as opposed to Shvius fruit, who received his Kedusha by way of growth. He grew on Shemitah. He was, is, and always will be identified as Perish Shvius. Despite your efforts otherwise. Even if you try to remove it, it won't go anywhere. So the Chiddush is that the Kedusha of the original fruit extends over to something else, but it still remains in the original fruit. Okay, how does this work? Lokach Perish Shvius Basar. He has too many apples. He takes some of that Perish Shvius and uses it to purchase Basar, meat. So now his meat is in exchange for his apples. And that's sort of taking the place of the apples. And it acquires the Kedusha of the original apple. So the apple remains Kaddish. Now the meat as well acquires Kedusha Shvius. It's going to be eaten instead of the apple. So the achil of the apple, so to speak, applies itself to the basar as well. Elu ve'elu mizbaran b'shvius. The original and the second item will be consumed on shvius the way Perish Shvius are meant to be consumed. So they both have Kedusha Shvius. What if he goes further? Lokach b'basar dagim. Takes that basar, which is Kaddish, exchanges it for fish. So what happens now? It's always going to be the last item on the list, which has Kedusha. That's going to be the final substitute for the original apple. So Yotza Basar, the Basar lost its Kedusha, v'nechnasu dagim. Now the fish have entered the scene. Now they are the substitutes for the original apples, and they have Kedusha Shvius. He goes further. Lokach b'dagim yain. He exchanges his fish for wine. Yotzu dagim, v'nechnas yain. The dagim lost their Kedusha, and the wine acquired Kedusha. Lokach b'yain shemen. He exchanged the wine for oil. Yotzu yain nechnas shemen. The wine leaves, and the shemen comes in. Okay, how does this work? What's the formula? Achron nichnas b'shvius. It's going to be the very last item on the list, which enters the Shvius realm, which acquires Kedusha Shvius, because that's going to be the final substitute for the original apple. But of course, the original apple remains Kaddish Kedusha Shvius. It can never lose that identity. End of Brisa. How is this a right to Rabbi Lezer? Very simple. Midiktani lokach lokach. From the fact that the Brisa repeats the word lokach over and over, what does that teach you? About the mode of transfer. Alma derech mekach in. Apparently the only way to transfer Kedusha is by way of transaction, and not simply by the way of direct transfer. That's right to Rabbi Lezer. Tanik B'Sir Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're going to prove Rabbi Yehuda's shita from a brisa, which says echad shvius, echad maser sheni, whether shvius fruit or maser sheni fruit, meschalulin al behema chayvoif. You could transfer the Kedusha over to an animal, behema, chaya, a bird, bein chayin, whether alive, bein shchut, and whether it's shechted. Divrei Meir. No. Al shchutin meschalin. You could transfer the Kedusha over to an animal which is already shechted, but not al chayin. Al chayin ein meschalin. Not a live animal. You know why? There's a concern. Gzeira shem yigadol mehem adarim. You might be tempted to keep that animal around to produce more offspring, to create a herd. What's the problem with that? It says Rashi, because Maser Sheni, similar to Shvius, is meant to be consumed during that very year and not be left over for future years. Therefore, Chacham are concerned about using live animals, which might be kept around and not be consumed in its appropriate time. Ambarava Machlekes, this whole discussion, meaning the concern of the Chachamim and Rameir's allowance, meaning the het of Rameir is only b'schorim, male animals, where their primary function is not to be used to produce offspring, and therefore Rameir says we're not concerned, he's going to leave it around. Avol b'nekeos, but when it comes to female animals, whose primary function is to be used for producing offspring and producing herds, Divrei all agreed there's a concern. El shchutim eschalim. You can only be machal the kedusha of the masasheni and shvita on shechted animals. Al chayin, however, on live ones, ein meschalim. You can't do that because over here there's a very real concern. Gzeiro shem yigalum adorim. You might keep the animal around to produce more offspring, to create a herd. In which case, it won't be used during the year when it's meant to be eaten. And therefore, we don't allow chilul on these types of animals. Okay, let's recap today's main points. We began with a reference to the halach in the Mishnah. He's purchasing a lulav and esrog on Shemitah. He must take care to hand over that money only to a trustworthy person who's going to treat that money with respect. But this concern only applies with respect to the esrog, which was picked on Shemitah. But when it comes to the lulav, which was picked on Shemitah, that doesn't have kedusha shvius because its primary growth occurred last year. And it identifies with last year, it's not kaddish. Apparently, says the Gemara, a lulav theoretically has kedusha shvius if it would grow on shvius itself. How is that? Firewood? Eitzim? Says more actually yes. It depends what type of wood. And that led us to the machlokes between Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi. How to define the meaning of the words V'hoisa Shabbos ha'aretz lochem la'achla. The word lochem indicates you can use shvius produce for all types of hanas. La'achla indicates only la'achil. Says Tanakama, you can have other hanas, but it has to be similar to achila. It has to be a direct use, a direct consumption. The hana and the destruction, the hana also biuri, has to be shava, taking place at the same time. Otherwise, he's just destroying the item to enjoy it later. Which Rabbi Yossi says, that's not needed. As long as it's a hana which is universally appreciated and needed, that's what the item is meant for. So even if the hana comes a bit later, that's okay. Let's go down the list. When it comes to lulav, all agree it has to do shvius. Lulav is meant to be used as a broom, where the use and the wearing out takes place at the same time. When it comes to firewood, here, machlokes, Tanakama says, it's only going to be appreciated once it turns into coal, once it's destroyed. That's not called an asabir or shava. Risa says, that's called a proper hana. Alikanim, alikifanim, which have dual functions. Well, it depends. If you pick the lachila, according to all shittas, that's shvius. If it's picked lahasaka, according to Tanakama, the hana will take place after destruction. It doesn't have to do shvius. Can one use shvius products for mishra, for soaking, for laundering? According to Rabbi Yossi, yes. It's hana shavah bakar. According to Tanakama, no. The hana only takes place post-destruction. All agree when it comes to melugma, ziluf, apektvizin, which aren't hanas and uses which are needed and appreciated by all people. Shvius products were not meant for those purposes. Now, also speaking about dimei shvius being kodesh, how does that work? According to Rabbi Lezer, dafka derech mekach. According to Rabbi Yehuda, whether derech mekach or derech chil, the money will be incorporated into the kedusha shvius. How do they know their shittas? It's based on psukim. You have a passage which says, Ki yoiveli kodesh tielachem, which according to Rabbi Yehuda tells you that Shemitah is like Hagdish, where the kedusha can be transferred whether derech mekach or derech chil. What does Rabbi Lezer do with that passage? It's coming to tell you the concept that Shvius is teifes damim like Hagdish. We have the drush of smuchim, b'shnasa yevel hazois, next to v'chitimkru mimkar, which according to Rabbi Lezer teaches us that only derech mekach or memkar would the kedusha be transferred to the money. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's coming to tell you, kama kasha afka shel Shvius. Misusing perish Shvius can lead to grave consequences of one actually having to give up his assets, sell his belongings in desperation. We learned that when a period of Shvius is exchanged for other fruit or other foods, what happens? The initial period of Shvius remains kaddish, that never loses its kedusha, as well as the last item on that list that also becomes kaddish b'kedusha Shvius. We had a raya from a brisa to Rabbi Lezer shita, a brisa that is supported Rabbi Yehuda. What do we michal Shvius and Sheni on animals? If it's shachet, no concern. If it's alive, and a keva poses a concern because you might leave it around to produce offspring and eat it past the prescribed time given to eat Maaseh Sheni and Shvius. That's a concern. When it comes to scharim, which aren't necessarily used for this purpose, we have machlokes. According to Rabbi Meir, there's no concern. According to Chachamim, even in that case, there's a concern. You're not meant to do that. Call to you and be well. Afreich and Purim.